Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and I wanted to touch base today to thank so many of you for wishing me well. In particular, Caroline and Sebastian and Claire and Carol and Pixie and Joanna and Pamela and all the others. Thank you so very much. I really do believe that sending out positive thoughts and intents really makes a difference when they're sincere, so I appreciate it. So yeah, as it turned out, it was the same mystery illness. It was back. I knew it immediately. As soon as I started feeling what I started feeling, I knew I was in trouble. And it was probably beginning to happen over the weekend. Well, I had my grandbaby, but I hadn't really picked up on how serious it was at that point. Sorry, my husband wanted my attention. But when my grandbaby was here, I wasn't really picking up on it because I had pain and I was really tired, But I was just like, yeah, I was off, But then after she went home, I couldn't move, I was in so much pain. And then by the next morning, yesterday morning, I said to my husband, I hate to tell you, I really hate to tell you, but we're back. I have to go to the hospital. I have to get this taken care of. So what I had really tried to do was get my doctor to see me yesterday so I could, give a sample and get diagnosed and just get antibiotics and not have to deal with the hospital. But he was like, well, we can't take you today. I have no availability. So then I thought I'd be clever and go to the urgent care. Now, for those of you, I don't know if urgent care is a thing in other parts of the world, but in the United States, or at least in this region, we have like mini ER rooms, where you can go, if you have something that's easily fixed, or, maybe they can write you a prescription if they can tell what it is, or they can take a test or whatever. They can do x-rays. So I thought I'd be slick and go there and tell them, I think I have a UTI or some kind of kidney ailment. And he said, well, the only thing that's going to show us is a CAT scan and a urine sample, and we don't do them. So I was like, what? So that was 2 hours wasted. So this was early in the day. So then he was really concerned about the shortness of breath, because I was really I have been short of breath because the pain is so bad, So he's like, well, I don't like the shortness of breath, so you better get to the hospital. You really ought to. I'm like, really? Do I really have to go to the hospital? And he said, if you were my mother, I would drive you to the hospital. So I get back in the car and I tell my husband, oh, I gotta go to the hospital. So that's what we did. 8 hours. 8 hours in the hospital. In the waiting room. 5 or 6 hours before I was even triaged. And the pain just increases and increases and increases, So after like 5 or 6 hours, I finally got triaged. And they took some blood, and they took a sample. They set me up for a CAT scan. They looked at the x-ray that I had. I did have an x-ray of my lung to make sure I didn't have like walking pneumonia, because I thought it could have been that. And although there's a spot on my lung, it's stable. It hasn't changed in years, so whatever it was. When I was a kid, I had bronchitis and pneumonia a few times, so it could have been that. So, and then when I went to this other hospital now, because last year the hospital, whose name is after a president, supposed to be top notch, and in Philadelphia it is, but the one in my area, dude, I told my husband, I'll die at home. Don't take me there. So we went out of our way and we went to another hospital, which was a bit further away. But I decided I wasn't going back to the other hospital. And the time frame and the lack of comfort was still an issue. And I think that's an issue with American hospitals, or at least in my neck of the woods. But we're supposed to have great ones. and they're still pretty lacking. I have to say, in this particular hospital that I went to yesterday, the staff, there wasn't a single person who wasn't nice, polite, friendly, caring. They're overworked, they're understaffed, and they probably have a handful of doctors when 100 people walk in every hour. And they do their best. And I understand that. That doesn't mean that I don't try to avoid it at all costs. But sometimes you have to get yourself to a hospital. And that's just the way it is. So anyway, they did another CAT scan. They did more x-rays. Excuse me. And the thing that got me to the hospital, the pain, it was a UTI. The CAT scan didn't show that it was a kidney infection, nor did it show there were any kind of like kidney stones or anything like that. So it was just a bad UTI, which is crazy. I never had UTIs my whole life. I'm meticulous, meticulous. I mean, we use bidets. Every one of my bathrooms in this house has a bidet, which is unusual for American homes, because they don't usually have bidets. I mean, more and more of us are catching on. My husband and I had been to, Europe many times, and we knew all about bidets, and they were like, we need a bidet, So it's like, how did it happen? I don't know, but I've had 2 in the past year, within a year, and they're no joke. And I think, and the thing is with me, and I don't know if it's like this with older girls, so for those of you who are older, there's no fever. My normal body temperature is like 97.4, If I have 98, it's, or 98.6, it's elevated, but it wouldn't be considered a fever. So, but I never had a fever. I never had trouble passing. I never had, I didn't have those other telltale signs. The only thing I had was, okay, we're in agony. And that's it. Oh, I still have my little thing on. I never took it off. my cute little bracelet. So I just, know that I have it when it escalates. Now, the one thing they were worried about was a blood clot because of the shortness of breath. And because this hospital hadn't seen me for this, like the other hospital, they didn't have records from the other hospital. So they had to do everything from scratch. So they had to rule out, a bad heart. They had to rule out the blood clots. They had to rule out all the things that would kill me. Which I told them, I just, my cardiologist last month just told me something's going to kill me and it's not going to be my heart. You know what I mean? But, that's not good enough, of course, because they have to know for themselves. So they had to test everything. They did catch, like I mentioned, there is a spot on my lung, which nobody's worried about. A spot on my liver, which worries me, since my mother died of liver cancer. Arthritic thoracic spine, which I live with that pain constantly. I can barely walk. I'll probably end up in a wheelchair. But they seem to think that some of the pain might have been from that. But I said, I live with that pain every day. I know that pain, but this is different. And they found a couple other things that, need to be followed up on, in addition to making sure I take my medicines. I have been taking the antibiotics, and I'm not back to normal, but I feel much improved. So I'm happy to say, I'm very happy to say. And so I'm having a follow-up appointment next week with my primary care to discuss the findings from my hospital visit. But that's the deal. And today is a moo-moo day, man. I'm taking it easy. It's lounge clothes all day. I got up, I put on my moo-moo. I'll probably be wearing moo-moos for a few days because they're my comfort clothes. And I'm not going anywhere, so. I thought today would be a good day to discuss something. When I sent my husband home when I was in the hospital. He took me to the hospital, of course, but after he parked the car and came in and he sat down, I said, babe, we're going to be here all day. We're going to be here for hours. He's like, yeah, okay. It's like, I don't want you to be here, because my husband's being treated for cancer, and, people are over there coughing and, I'm like, you need to get the hell out of here. I don't really want you here. So he left, so he at least was able to come home and, watch TV and whatever he likes to do. So he would text me and he would tell me things that were going on the news. And one of the things was, babe, they're trying to legalize tarot reading in Pennsylvania. Because in Pennsylvania, it's illegal. It's illegal to charge money for fortune telling, which includes tarot readings and palm readings. And, for those of you who do this for a living, there are a lot of states where it's illegal. I mean, in Pennsylvania, it's a felony. Now, of course, we know that you can be a felon and still become president of the United States, so I don't know what the big deal is if you're a felon. I'm being sarcastic. But at any rate, Pennsylvania is trying to change the laws. Now, I don't say that I'm I am a tarot reader. I mean, it's not that I don't say I'm a tarot reader, but I don't say that I'm fortune telling or let me tell you your fortune. I mean, I interpret the cards, but my perspective of it, and I think I make a point of it in damn near every video, is that I use the cards to facilitate understanding. And, I ask the universe, just like a person puts out a prayer, dear God, hear me pray, right? Nobody would go to jail for that. What's the difference when I say, dear universe, please, hear my request. Give me some insight or help me guide this individual. Help me interpret the cards to have meaning for this person. How is that any different than asking God for a sign? I don't know. But it's considered, because it's tarot reading, it's considered fortune telling. Now, one of the reasons I love my state is because it's legal. There's no question. You can be a fortune teller if you want. You could be a tarot reader, which falls under fortune telling, unfortunately. You can be a palm reader. You could do any of those things. It's buyer beware. If you go to one of these people, you have to be careful. We're all adults here. Figure it out. But some people are really gullible, and I understand. I understand the concern. But those are the people that should be punished. Not the people who... And some people will say, none of you are moral or none of you are ethical. Any one of you who does this for a living, it's indecent, it's immoral, it's not ethical. I disagree. And I'm licensed in the state of New Jersey. They know what I do. I have a license to do it. So, and years ago, for what it's worth, and I don't think it's worth much, when I was back in the, I don't know when it came out, I guess back in the 90s, which group was it? It was there was the American Tarot Association, I guess. I don't remember what they were called. But they were a group of tarot people. And so they decided that they were going to have a standard and that you can get licensed if you wanted to. And I thought, why not? So I got licensed and to just be a professional tarot reader. I didn't take it up to because it costs money, I just took the test and they said, well, you're proficient at that time. And so they said, you qualified to be a professional tarot reader. So it's great. So I have my certification, I didn't do it because I thought it was a legal thing. I just did it because I thought, well, it's just one more thing that makes you look credible. But then with the state of New Jersey, I just became a licensed and credentialed individual. But a lot of states, be careful, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Carolina. And even if a state is okay overall, some cities like in Baltimore, Maryland, you can't do it. So just be careful, really be careful. And even if it's not illegal, like it is in those states, including Pennsylvania, you could get into some hot water in other states, you know. Like when I was in Virginia, I think it wasn't listed as one of the states where it's illegal. Maybe the things have changed. But at the time, Virginia wasn't too keen on, I'm going back a couple of years, maybe 10 years. Virginia wasn't okay with tarot reading as far as I understood. So I didn't, like when I went to Virginia, I closed down shop, you know, because I wasn't going to do any readings while I was in Virginia because I didn't want to get caught up in any kind of trouble, even though my business is in New Jersey. But anyway, you are swell for being here for 15 minutes. I owe you a few reads. So I'm just going to use my pretty deck, where is the box? My Metanoia. You'll see it when I flip the camera, by Bouchette Designs. So let's ask, will Pennsylvania manage to lift the restrictions and make tarot reading legal in Pennsylvania? They can't, for the life of them, legalize medical M. Can't do it. Oh no, yeah, recreational. You can get medical M in Pennsylvania, but you can't get recreational M. You know, it's a red state, you know. I'm laughing. My bias is they're never going to legalize tarot cards in Pennsylvania. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But you never know. If there's enough money in it, people are greedy. You know, they might overlook what their view is of immoral. I apologize for that interruption. My husband wanted to say goodbye because he's running an errand. So if there's enough money in it, people might be able to justify immorality for a buck, you know. So there's that, you know, if there's a chance that, you know, the people, you know, if the politicians feel there's a way to line their pockets, they'll probably be all for it, you know. So we'll see. So that's what I'm going to use this deck for. Okay, and let's give it a signature spread of 9 cards plus 4 for a total of 13 cards. Just see all the in and outs of what it will take and what it looks like for Pennsylvania to finally make it legal. Okay, well, it takes money, it takes partnership, it takes money. Okay, everything takes money. No surprise there. Well, a woman of the suit of cups, they might need to, you know, consult some individuals who do this for a living. Be in partnership with, you know, let's face it, the majority, or traditionally, were women. There's nowadays, always, I mean, there was plenty of men. The occultists were all men, you know, by and large were men. Okay, and to make things legal. Okay, so there's so far it looks all right. A partnership with people who maybe do this in an effort to make it legal. I think that is the Justice card, right? Yep. Again, another 2 under a 2. Creative, fancy footwork to get something done. Another woman, wow. Front and center of the core 9, we have the Empress. So the arguments made need to be that it's a secular thing that's not necessarily, well, I don't know. I think for me, it's kind of just as valid a religion as anything else. I pray to my whatever's out there, you know, and ask for advice and guidance. But it's not seen as religious. You know, it's seen as secular. But maybe it needs to be seen as religious, you know, so that you can protect your religion. But of course now, in this climate, The only religion that's valid is their evangelistic notion of what is Christian, or what is religion, rather. Okay, so we have the Knight of Swords. Nine batons under 2. Ooh, 10 batons. Ooh, we have a lot of batons. This is going to require a lot of cooperation with a lot of people. They're going to have to call upon the wisdom and the experience of individuals who can argue a good point and shed light on the history of it. The light isn't being shed forward. The light on this particular card, in this particular deck, the light is being shed back. So the light is being shed on historic accounts, things that have happened in the past. Let's see what the Quint card is that will fall there. I'll be right back. So against what I really think is probably going to happen, the quintessential card for the entire spread is the World card, which means the manifestation of the desire or of the wish. So it does seem that ultimately Pennsylvania will manage to legalize tarot readings. Now, one of the reasons that they probably want to push it, and I lived in Philadelphia for many years. I lived at least 10 years in Philadelphia, and about the majority of that, maybe more like 15 years in Philadelphia, and about 10 were in Center City. So anybody who's been to Center City, Philadelphia, and South Street, where all the hippies meet, right? There's all these little shops, and it's big money, it's big money. And it's opportunity. And, where there's money being made, there's taxes being paid. So it stands to reason that maybe, particularly in the cities, or even the smaller towns that have like metaphysical shops and stuff, people are always attracted to those kinds of stores, right? It's like a magnet. And you go and you get pretty stones, or you get pretty tarot decks, or you get, candles or crystal balls. You're attracted to those kinds of places. And one of the things they do is they read your cards. So I think, especially if they want to bring businesses into towns, that are hip, it's an attraction. Let's face it. Some people might just go, let's go to South Street. Let's go get a reading, They might not go to South Street for any other reason than that. So I think it will ultimately happen. Now, when I've seen this card, the Pope card of this particular deck, I get a vibe from this guy. Like, I don't quite get the sincere Pope Francis, Pope Leo kind of guy. I get a kind of guy who might have been Pope like when popes were known to be shady. You know what I'm saying? That's the vibe I get from this guy. Now, maybe in time I'll see him differently, but I don't know. Something about him. Something about his look. So this is a guy who on the surface is very religious, but maybe not so deep down, is a man also of the world. And he recognizes that maybe it's time. And he carries a lot of clout. Maybe he could persuade people. We have the Lover card here, which shows that it's like a match made in heaven, right? To get this bill done. And the wheels of fate might change. They're going in this direction. Let's see what it's pointing. Oh, and I wanted to mention, like, the collaborative effort or the experience. What is it shining on? And it's shining on love. or it's shining on the ideal partnership. This isn't a 2, but the first card in the spread is, which is like a partnership, right? And so we have, the bond of the lover is just a bond with somebody you trust. So it's almost like a 2, or it's just echoing the partnership, right? So I guess the light of the Hermit is reflecting on other places, where this works out, where the bond or the deal, whatever deal they have to make, just works out, and it's like a love fest for everybody. But it will take some effort. It will take a lot of effort, a collaborative effort, but it gets bigger, and they make progress. It doesn't mean that it'll happen in the first try, but I think it will happen reasonably soon. Front and center of the core 9, we have the Empress. She's a secular woman. She falls underneath the Queen of Cups, who is also secular, but she's like maybe more spiritual. So we have the spiritual and we have the practical people in positions of authority who can come out and speak on it. I kind of, I live in Jersey, so what I think or feel is irrelevant to people in Pennsylvania. But they need people of authority, who can speak. I think they need to tap into that resource of people who can help them out, or to speak a good argument. But ultimately, the bill will pass, the law will pass, we have justice. So I think it'll be they'll get a shot, they'll get a fair shot. And the emissaries, will do their research. This guy, the one in charge for making those decisions morally and ethically, he'll send his people out to investigate and to interview and collaborate, and I think it will happen. So good job, Pennsylvania. I think you're going to get it. I would have guessed no. But there's money in it, and I guess there must be. I'm not raking in the dough. I'm certainly not raking in the dough. But, for like the little shops, if there's money, okay, it's money in it for the towns, right? Because if it attracts people to go into the town, it's good for the other businesses, So it's not necessarily just that the tarot parlor is going to make a lot of money. But let me flip the camera. It's not like the shop itself is a windfall, but it brings people in, just like sports. Okay, not to the grand scale that sports brings people in. Sports really brings people into a town. But, these little shops, they add something to a community. They do. And they attract people. And I know people sometimes just go down to South Street just for that. Just for that. So I hope you enjoyed my video, and thank you for listening. I mention it to you guys because some of you care. So that's why I told you all about it. I have a follow-up with my doctor next week, next Tuesday. So I'll get a follow-up, and the spot on the liver and the spot on the lung, we'll still do all that. The diverticulitis, we'll do that, and we'll just go through everything, But the problem that was what took me to the hospital, I think, is, I'm already feeling, I'm not 100%, but I'm on the upswing, and that's good. The pain, I can manage pain. I'm used to pain, but I don't really need painkillers, so to speak. To me, my husband said, well, what about pain relief? You need pain relief. It's like, well, you know what? The pain relief comes in curing the problem. If the antibiotics cure the problem, the pain goes away. As far as my arthritic thoracic spine and my lower spine, I have degeneration of the spine. I'm probably gonna end up in a wheelchair. I don't wish it on myself, but I see the future, and I have a feeling. But there's a lot of things that are worse than that. And I can deal with pain, as long as it's not unbearable. And the pain for a UTI, where it had gotten terrible pain, couldn't deal with that because I knew something was seriously wrong. All right, friends, until next time, peace, stay well, and be brave.